Hello there, and welcome again to AGRC 213, Computers and Technology in Agriculture. We begin the final segments of our course and jump into Microsoft Excel. And in this Module 1 video, we'll be talking about how to utilize Excel, what are its potential applications in agriculture, and then some of the basics in terms of how to utilize Excel. I'll tell you right up front, as you come out of Access and the restrictions and cumbersome nature of Access, and then transition to Excel, you'll find Microsoft Excel is much, much more user-friendly and much easier to navigate. And in fact, in many ways, there are multiple avenues to accomplish some of the things that you'll try and have to do in Excel. And I find Excel quite easy to work with and therefore pretty fun to mess with. So first things first, when we get into Microsoft Excel, if we talk about how you could utilize it in agriculture, I've got a sample spreadsheet that I put together here that just goes through 5 fields and has the bushels, let's say bushels of corn produced, acres, average yield per acre, price, revenue, expense, and net income on each of those 5 fields. So for example, we could do a cost analysis on our return on investment on those particular 5 fields. You could do a budget. You could do your home budget even. You could do an analysis of credit hours over the number of years, over a span of years, to establish a trend line. You could look at average soybean yields per year on all of your farms. So there's a lot of different applications in agriculture. And the benefits that Excel provides is different from Access, and where you can glean information out of it in terms of reports and find specific pieces or records or populations. Excel does the analysis component, the addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and other analysis. It does charting. It will do some of that analysis that Access does not do. And so it gives you that tool really to work on it. You'll find in your textbook that when you get to Excel, it recommends a requirements document. And basically all that is a sketch or outline of what's to be in your Excel workbook and worksheets, and how it's going to be arranged and what information is critical. I'm not going to ask you to do that in this particular set of assignments, but what that does is provide a roadmap for someone who's going to put together an Excel spreadsheet and what it is to look like and how it is to be built, and therefore what reports might come out of it, what charts, what data, what analysis, what information are you hoping to get out of it. Now, a few things. First, what we're looking at on the screen here is an individual worksheet. You'll notice the tabs at the bottom of the sheet. Each of these is a worksheet. I've already named my first tab, and each collection of tabs that sit in this file is what we call a workbook. And I'm as guilty of it as anyone, and I have continued to try and help myself out to make it simpler. If, for example, you were doing a budget, an annual budget, you could create one file, and then every year you just add a tab. You add a worksheet to that workbook instead of creating a new file each and every time, because then it is difficult to compare year to year because they're all in separate files. So you could put those all in the same file and use just separate worksheets. So that is the difference between a worksheet and a workbook as you go through your textbook, because it is going to refer to both of those things. There's 2 types of information that you'll put and enter into an Excel file. One is called text and one is called data. Anything that has a letter in it is going to automatically be coded as text. There's no analysis or addition or subtraction that goes with text. It's just entered as such, and text will always be by default left justified, like you see with the fields over here. It'll always be what we call left justified, or to the left of the cell. Anything that's a number is by default coded as data, and therefore you can do mathematical operations on it. By default, you know it's entered as data because it is right justified. It sits at the right side of the cell. So there's all kinds of different things that you can do in terms of changing these, which we'll get into in other sections. So like I said, for example, I've entered some information in here that we may want to calculate. And, I have a total column here, our total row. These are rows and up and down is columns. And let's say I didn't put that in there. Of course, doing the math here is really critical. It's a key piece of what you're going to do in Excel. I will encourage you to utilize the formula and function tools and charting tools that are in Excel. That's the whole point of what we're teaching you here. Do not take your calculator on your phone and add this range of cells together and then hand type in the sum. Utilize the tools that are in Excel. So, for example, if we go to the Home tab here and get over to the Editing Gallery, this is one way to get a sum on a range of cells. So you just simply click this Auto Sum button, and it's going to highlight this range that's above that particular cell. It looks up first and left second, so automatically it's going to look up, and that's the correct range. So we're just going to hit Enter, and it gives us the sum. That way we know what our net income is. You can also signify to Excel that you're going to create a formula or function like is what is up here. Okay, you can signal to Excel that a formula is coming by simply entering equals, and then we can hand type in sum, and then open parentheses, and we'll hit this cell reference as J and 5, which highlights that first cell. Going to the bottom of the range, J9. So then now you know how to, by hand, enter a sum. Now, it gives us these hash marks here, and all that means is the column is not wide enough. The data is there. The column's not wide enough. We can do one of two things. We can just click and slide these column dividers and give it enough room, or double click on that and it will give it enough room. So very simply, easy ways to do some basic editing. Okay, next is utilizing what we call the fill handle. That's this little square to the bottom right-hand side, and as I hover around, you'll see my mouse changes to much different things here. But this green square that's on the bottom right-hand side of the cell, that's what we call the fill handle. That's a copy-paste tool that's easily put into Excel so that you can copy and paste certain things. So let's say we know that we want to use this sum formula over here in the total revenue column. All we have to do is click and grab. You see it changes to a small plus sign to the left, and it's going to copy and paste that formula into the column to the left. So now we have that same formula, just referenced to different cells in the total revenue column. We don't have to re-enter it each and every time. Very simple. And I would use that as often as possible. And it changes the cell references, and we call that relative referencing. When we get to formatting in Excel, it's essentially the same things as what you would see in Word, PowerPoint, or Access. All the same formatting tools are up here in the ribbon and in each of the galleries that are up here. It's very simple to go ahead and format. If we wanted to change these column headers and we want to bold them, for example, or we want to put them in the center of the column, we can very simply do that with the same editing tools that you've gotten used to this point. Probably one of the next features that I want to cover is how to do basic charting. So you want to first highlight the range of cells in which you want to create the chart on, which I've done here. And then you'll go to the Insert tab and go to Charts. And for this one, we'll just use a simple bar chart. So all I got to do is create that range, highlight your headers, and select the appropriate chart, and it's going to build you a chart for you. So here we've built a bar graph, and this is what we call an embedded chart. An embedded chart sits on the worksheet in which the data comes from. There's also a way to move this chart to its own sheet, and move chart location just right up here at the top right in the charting tools contextual tab. That will move that, so just this chart itself will sit on a whole new tab down here at the bottom of your workbook. Very handy little tools. I will encourage you when thinking about charting that it's important to consider the type of chart that you want to put together. The picture tells a lot of the story, and so it's really crucial that you select the chart appropriately. A bar graph like this one tells you a certain piece of data. It tells a certain story. If I put together a pie chart or a line graph implies more of a trend line. A pie chart implies more of pieces of a whole. So you may want to really think about critically what type of chart you select for the story that you're trying to illustrate with that charting tool. That's basic charting. And in the first set of assignments, you'll do very basic charts just like this one. As we get to wrapping up this particular video, I don't want it to get too long, and we'll talk about changing worksheet names. And that's down here at the bottom. I've created this simple one. It's just section 1 down here at the bottom left-hand corner. All you have to do in order to change that worksheet name is just simply double click on it, and it puts the cursor down there, and now you can change that worksheet name to whatever you like for it to be. You can also change the tab color if you like. Very simple, and you just hit enter or click off of it, and you'll be able to enter that tab name. If you go to doing some printing, and I don't want you to do any printing for my purposes, but always use print preview. It's a quick little tip that I'll give you that's not in your textbook, but oftentimes your spreadsheets don't necessarily fit neatly on a piece of paper. So you always want to use print preview to see what that information looks like. And then lastly, there is an auto calculate tool set that sits in the status bar. So for example, we could highlight this range of bushels, and we go down here to the status bar, and it'll tell you mathematically the average is 13,635.2 bushels. There are 5 numbers in that range, and if we added all those up, it would actually come up to 68,176 bushels. Now, that being said, do not use that to answer some of the questions or enter some of the data that goes in here. For example, I know that's 68,176. I could come in here and just type that in. Say it's 68,176. Well, if I'm grading it, I'm going to look on the face and I say, yep, looks like the correct answer. However, all I have to do is go to this formula tab and say, show formulas. And I'm going to know that you entered that piece of information in manually instead of using a formula or function. Again, I cannot stress enough, there's a specific grading rubric part of your Excel rubrics that looks for utilizing formulas and functions. If you don't use them, it's going to count against you. So use them at all times when it calls for it. So if you struggle with how to put the formula or function in correctly, make sure and ask. I'll be glad to help you. But you're really missing out on the key feature of Excel if you do not learn how to put formulas in so that it helps you do the correct calculations automatically. Furthermore, if we put that 68,176 back in and we come back up here and say, oh, in field 1, I actually didn't have 6,550 bushels. I actually had 5,000 bushels. That's not going to change the total automatically. So that means this number would be incorrect, and you would have to remember to go back and change that one. Excel knows how to change these things automatically if you put formulas in. So if we utilize the sum function here, just like we did before, and now we've got a function in there, I can go back and make that change again, 5,000 bushels. We had the incorrect ticket amount there. Fix it, and it's going to automatically change the sum at the bottom. It makes that adjustment automatically, and you also notice that your embedded chart has changed to reflect that appropriately. So that's why I think it's really important to make sure and understand how to use formulas and functions. So as we wrap up this quick video on Excel Module 1, There's going to be a number of things that we'll practice with this. So take your time going through them. And as always, if you have questions, please let me know. I would be glad to help you. Thanks again for tuning into this video.